It's the little extra that makes things extraordinary. And that is my guest today's favorite quote. And we couldn't figure out who it was by, but it's a good one. So, welcome again to The Profitable Photographer with Lucy Dumas. That's me. And I'm super excited about my guest today, Karen McCall. I was enjoying her and all her personality and beautiful photography and great tips as Facebook friends. And then I got to meet her gorgeous magnetic self at the Imaging Expo. And I was like, Karen, I got to get you on my show. And so today is the day. Yay. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wait. Yes, thank you for being on the show. Okay,
I'm
let me
happy to
tell you a
be here.
little.
I'm honored. Go ahead.
The honor
Shush.
is mine. Okay, so today's guest, Karen, is a master photographer, master artist, uh, and she's won so many awards. We could just have a whole show on her awards. She's been in the photography world for 35 plus years doing portraits. She's in Massachusetts, Massachusetts.
Massachusetts.
She has a husband and a couple sons and some doodle dogs. She has had a thriving studio for decades, and then when digital art came out, she fell in love with the art and earned the artist degree 6 years ago, it looks like. She's had
Yeah.
accolades from, yes,
Yep.
yep. Um,
Yeah.
okay, she's had accolades like Team USA, Diamond and Double Diamond status, the ASB Elite Awards for 7 years straight. Yikes. And though she's proud of her trophies, she's more excited about growth, creativity, and paying it forward to us through mentoring and education. And I'm sure you'll discover she has a great sense of humor and a passion for learning. So, welcome to my show, Karen.
Thank you, Lucy.
You're welcome.
Ask
Anything
away.
else I left out, or do you have a little quick like how you discovered
No.
photography?
Um, my background. How did I discover photography? Well, I my grandfather used to work for Polaroid, and I always had an interest in photography. I was always had an interest in coloring and creating, and but my mother always said to me, that's not a job. So I went to school and I ended up working for Smith Barney, which is a old-fashioned investment firm. They used to say, we do things the old-fashioned way. Well, that was definitely not me.
Yeah.
So I worked there. I think I worked there for 2 years. I was a sales assistant to a broker, and then I got myself demoted to receptionist. And then I was like, hello, pretty much got myself fired because I hated it so much.
Mhm.
Then I went to work for a newspaper in the advertising department. And, that was always my dream to be in advertising, but I didn't want to start off as a receptionist. And then I found myself as a receptionist and demoted. So I said, I'm starting over. So I worked for a newspaper in their ad department, so I was getting there, but not quite. And I used to drive by a photo studio every day on my way home, and I would drive and I'd be like, how do I
Mm,
get into that? That's what I want to
mm,
do.
mm.
Um, um, and so one day I had enough nerve to stop and go in and talk to him. And, like most photographers, just him and his wife, but he had a storefront. And he said, I'm not really hiring anyone. And so I left and I started working for Olin Mills, which was very creative. They allowed you 5 poses:
Mhm.
1, 3, 4, and 5.
And you got to be really creative with the lighting too.
Exactly,
Not.
a string to your nose because you weren't smart enough to figure it out. And then I was always, so it taught me one thing, to get a smile out of a child like that, because
Mm,
you only had, they would triple book and you only had X amount of time to get that smile. So it really did hone my skills with children,
hmm
expressions. So that's good. And then, and then Ralph, who was the owner of the studio, called me up and said, my wife is doing, leaving the studio, and would you like to come in? So I interned
Oh,
for him for 3 months with no pay. And then I was doing all of his children because he did not like children. He did more commercial work. So I was doing all his children. And so I worked there for a little bit. And then I said, I got to start doing this on my own. And so I just took the leap and said, I'm doing this on my own, and did tons and tons of children until digital came out, when everybody was a photographer. And then
mhm.
I reinvented myself again and I started doing seniors. So now I do a lot of seniors and other things. But at COVID, I decided that I was going to reinvent myself again and start learning Photoshop and painting. I had taken one class with Marian Talamo, was the first one. I'm like, I got to learn this. And
hmm
so I painted my way through COVID, and here I
Here you are. So,
am.
um, interesting story and
Mhm.
interesting similarities. Um, I I got a little fill-in job at a studio um, that did a lot of seniors and had a coupon deal, kind of like Olin Mills.
Yeah.
And a friend of hers had another studio, and he was a big, burly, loud guy, and neither of them were good with kids. And I did that same. The lights were right where they were. Do not move these lights. And I learned how to, I also learned how much studio photography is furniture arranging to get people's
Ex-
bodies, because this is a
right.
two-dimensional surface. And we have to also have the camera at the right angle and such. So yeah, I learned how to get kids like that comfortable and happy and all of that. So it's similar because you and I were
Just
in
as
the
a
trenches
person. Yeah.
in the same time period. I've got this little
Mhm.
sneeze that might show up in a minute. I need to pause and take
Okay.
care of that. So hold on. Okay, I'm back, everybody.
Okay, great.
So something that you said um, about, okay, what was it? Anyway, how has digital photography helped your business? Besides, using a good digital camera is helpful, but how's your digital art been a boon to your business? Because that's, oh, I know. I was thinking about your dad saying it's not a job. Well, I know a lot of people who are amazing digital artists, but it's not a job for them, which it may or may not be for you, but the creativity. Anyway, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but how does that contribute, since this show is called The Profitable Photographer? How is being an incredible digital artist part of your profitability, if it does, of your business? Or are they two separate entities? Is one a labor of love and the other is your profession?
I'm trying to blend them, but my actually you can see her right now, my fabulous ostrich right there. She's in my
Uh-huh.
studio. And so that I started just because that was what I just loved to do. That was, it's just something that I've just always wanted to do and just never knew how to do it. And so once I learned how to do it, so that was a labor of love. But what I'm doing is, well, I've got this. What I'm trying to do now is merge the two. So in my studio, I have, this is sort of my sitting room. office, and then I have a full working studio. I do photograph a lot of high school seniors, and so in my studio, I have a beautiful portrait that I did of a high school senior that was on a studio background, and I have a few dresses and things that I have hanging there. And if I get like the right subject and the dress kind of speaks to her, I'll say at the end of the session, do you want to do something fun? And the image that I
Mm.
have, I had her stand in the studio and I had her stand and looking like, this. And I said, I'm going to put something in your hand. It might be a bird, might be a rat, might be a squirrel, might be an apple, might be whatever. It might be a lantern. I had girls holding a lantern and say, just stand there. And then I digitally put that into, sort of a fairy tale type setting. I didn't send you any of those to look at, but I have one of those printed in my studio. And if it sings to them, then I add it onto a session. So I confess I don't do a lot of them. I want to do more of them. I also do, the few children that I do photograph, I have put them on. I started off just painting them, and then I had a client said, "Can you put her sitting on a moon?" And I said, "Yeah." And so I did this little girl, and I had her sitting on a half moon and sort of in the Milky Way, and then she got that for the child's bedroom. So it does cross
Mm.
over. It doesn't cross over.
Hmm.
Um, but I have it in my studio, and my giant ostrich is in my studio too, and I use that, and I say to my seniors, if I can do that to an ostrich, then I can take care of a few blemishes and scratches. Be about.
So it's good marketing for you as an artist
Mhm.
that even if they don't want anything digital, that just a beautiful photograph, which by the way, Karen's photography of seniors and families is just really high quality, gorgeous lighting. So it gives them confidence
Yeah,
in you as a photographer. It sets you apart.
right. And they say
Okay, so
just it's kind of like a wow factor, and they say you painted that, and then I go into it, and I have taught to I have an educational site and I have done in-person classes. It's difficult because, most of the photographers that want to learn are just, all over the country. But I have done some for like local students and things that come in because they've seen it and they want to start learning it too. So
mhm,
it's
mhm.
a
Well,
side.
yeah, and you teach, have you done platform speaking? Did you teach at imaging or
Yeah,
WPPI?
I haven't taught it at imaging as yet.
Yeah,
I
but
applied, but I have done different states. I did a full week in New York. Been to Washington State. I've been to Virginia. I've been to Tennessee, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, various states. So I've done speaking. Uh, my problem is I don't have a sponsor, and some of the guilds don't have the funds to have you come in. So
right,
that's a bit of a challenge for me. But I do have an educational platform that I am putting more of my energy into that, where I have
great,
classes on how to start from basic Photoshop painting to a start to finish, and how I
got
painted
it.
this image start to finish. So I'm doing a lot of online teaching and recorded classes is what my and
Great.
that's my goal. So
Okay, so I want to, since I've gotten the how does this help your profitability question handled, now I want to see if we can dig into some tips on becoming a digital artist. I know the title of one of your workshops is Photoshop painting from drab to fab. I love that.
it is,
Um,
yeah.
so now, first question, and my listeners like step-by-step things if you can
Mhm.
break some things down. So, first of all, how do you get started on a project? Like, what's the inspiration, or when you're like, okay, I'm like, does it start with I have an image and I'm gonna make it digital art, or I have an idea or something else? So I'll let you share rather than trying to lead the witness.
You know what? If you're just starting out, and to be honest with you, I started painting animals. I have a love of animals. I've always loved animals. I'm that person that's gonna stop and help a baby bird across or turtle across the street or rescue a squirrel or a bunny or I'm just that person. It's like I
Mhm.
love wildlife and I love I call myself a girly tomboy because I am such a, that's the side that people don't know about me that I have my own chainsaw and that's what I want for Mother's Day. Don't don't get me a massage, get me a chainsaw. But
I love it.
so because of my love of animals, I started painting animals. One, because I found them easier to start with because people, if you change a highlight in their face, you completely change the look of them. So to me,
Mhm.
starting with animals was easier and I could not sort of mess it up. I'm also a lover of humor and Disney and animation. And so a lot of my images have sort of I hear the judges say all the time, it has a Disney-esque feel to it.
Mhm.
That's what speaks to me. So if you're starting out, um, I, I would say start off with something that you like, whether it be flowers or animals or people. I mean, clothing is fairly easy to paint, and start off with easy subjects and something that speaks to you. If you don't like animals, then don't paint. If you don't like Disney and humor, don't go down the sort of the animated kind of look. Do more realistic. And so
Mhm.
my art is getting more. I'm kind of getting out of the animated look. I still do that, but I'm getting more into photorealistic and more detailed because my skill level is increasing year to year. So,
Yes.
um,
Okay. So step one, start with something you already like or are drawn to.
mhm.
So what would step two be then
Step two would
for
be then
listeners?
start with an image. So, um, you know,
So what do you do? So you've got this image. Now, where does your mind go?
So you know what?
How do you
That's a
create?
hard question because a lot of times I will start with an image and I won't know where I'm going with it until I start painting it. Like that image of the
Okay.
ostrich, I didn't know that I was going to add the hat. It just once I put an eye into an image, it kind of gives it personality and then I kind of build off of that. So you were going to ask something. Go ahead.
Okay. So step two then would be just get started.
Just just
Well, I'm
just
guessing step two would be learn how to do digital art
yeah,
and,
learn
just learn the skills.
learn the tools. Once you learn the tools, and a lot of people start with just like the mixer brush because that's what's taught. A lot of digital artists start and they teach the mixer brush. I can say
Okay.
that's a great way of doing that, but I can say that when I paint, I probably only use the mixer brush 10% of the time.
So
I
what do you use and what
I
do you
use
teach
I
people to
use
use?
the well, I do teach and I teach the mixer brush how to paint with the mixer brush, but I teach
Okay.
um, with just using the brush and using the smudge tool because I think you have much more control. So I am a huge, in fact, one state that I taught in, they called me the smudgy. They're smudgies because I use the smudge tool now because I find it has more control and then
Got
just
it.
different brushes. But learning the tools and then building on those tools. So there's like layers.
Okay.
When you start an art piece, I usually start with like an image. And if you start with an image, let me backtrack for a second. If you start with an image that is not yours, or you can, I mean, one of my paintings, I took. Like if you don't have pictures of birds, like I love birds and I love painting birds, but I live in Massachusetts. There's not a lot of colorful, beautiful birds. There's a few, but there's not a lot. So one of my paintings, I watch wildlife shows and I watch Disney, and I paused the TV on a bird, and I took a picture of the screen because in the artist category you can use images that aren't yours. I don't do that anymore. But I
Mhm.
took a picture of the screen because it was this beautiful blue and orange bird, and then I started painting it. Um, so you can get your images from anywhere or your inspiration from from anywhere, and then the story the story part of it will build. Like I have one that um I was bullied as a kid, and so that's a trigger for me if someone says anything about being bullied. I'm always looking out for the underdog type person. And so I have
Um,
this image of a bull.
Karen,
Yeah,
Karen,
yeah.
you froze for a second there.
Oh, again?
So, but you're back.
Okay.
So,
Part did we
so
freeze on? This is not very
yeah.
good, Lucy. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to do another
No, it's all right.
one. Okay, good.
It's no, we're
Yeah,
not being graded on it. Nobody's
good,
paying me. Nobody's paying
good,
you. We're
good,
just sharing. We're just sharing and caring.
good.
Okay. So where you were, and this was if you don't have your own image, you can use other images. When you say in the art category, if people don't know about the Professional Photographers of America's print competition and categories, there's an art category, and you it's not paintings and things, it's digital art. So you can get pieces and bits from other places. I know I have a friend who goes to museums, and she'll like find a little hand or a little something on a painting, and that will end up in her art. Um,
Yep.
and just in case I have to clip this out, I love that you got a bird from a TV show where there were beautiful birds. So, um, yeah, I love that. I love knowing that. All right.
You start
So
with
then you
picking.
started,
Go ahead. Sorry.
so then you got that picture of the bird, and then you were like, okay, I'm going to do art with this. So, and you got all your tools and things. So, like, what's your first kind of steps? Can you share?
So the
Um,
first thing I do is I whatever image that I'm going to use, I'll take that with, so it's the image, the image spoke to me, or I was just drawn to it. I take it, and the first thing I always do is I extract it. So I bring it into Photoshop, I extract the image, select it. So the image is selected, and I keep that, and I work extensively in layers. So, like the image of the ostrich behind me, each one of those feathers is a layer. So
mm,
I select them first, and then I drop in a background that I think that I think about my color, I think about the composition, I lay it out the way I want it to be, and I keep it in layers because 9 times out of 10, I change the background midway through and say, that's not working. I don't want this all green tones. I wanted a blue sky, and I'll change it. So
mhm.
if it's in layers, I just change it. So then I kind of place, and then so that's step one. So step one, and then I save it. So you have that as step one saved. Then I start painting the background, and I start using the mixer brush just to do my background and do like an underpainting, call it an underpainting. So the best images that I do are, it's layers. So it's one layer, and then you go back, and then there's another layer, and then there's another layer. And the more layers it has, it starts looking more. I'm actually, my images now are almost starting to look pen and ink drawn, because it has so many layers of brush strokes and less mixer brush. The mixer is going to mix all of the pixels, so it doesn't have a photographic quality anymore. So that's how I use
Mhm.
the mixer. But I do it very lightly so I can see the detail. Like if you mix out and blend out the details, of an animal, of the fur or the feathers or whatever, you don't know where to put it back. So
Mm.
that's one of the most common mistakes that my students make. They over use some sort of filter and they over blend, and then you don't know where to put back. So,
Okay. Good tip. Good
yeah.
tip. Okay. Two questions on that,
Hmm.
or a comment and a question.
Hmm.
So people who paint with paint, physical paint, know about underpainting.
Hmm.
Um, so I love that you use that same technique, which is to get a base. And this is, it sounds like you're at this point talking about the background. Do you do these in Photoshop or are you using, uh, is it called Painter?
No,
Corel?
I used to paint in I learned from in Corel. That was my very first painting class. Um, but I found it just more difficult to use. Photoshop is
Yes.
easier because you have all your tools there. You can use a clone tool if you want. You can use, I don't use a lot of AI, and that's mainly because I do compete a lot in, Professional Photographers of America, and they don't allow AI. And now I'm starting to photograph all of my elements. So if I need a crow for, a girl walking through a graveyard, I'm photographing
As
crows now.
as one does.
It's enough. I have two sides. I have humor and animated, and I have a little bit creepy and rats and frogs and
Huh?
um that
I
type
love it.
princess princesses with rats on their head. Like I have one image that's called she's holding a rat and there's a crow on her head, and the title was Your Prince is a Rat. So I have that. So and those stories kind of start with the with the girl and where she's doing, and then I add something and I'm like, okay, I need something else to make it a story because her just standing there is not a story. So most of my images will have an element put in to add to the storytelling. Or
Got
if
it.
it's a bird, I'll usually have a second bird. So one's like talking to the other one, or or a squirrel is talking to a caterpillar or something like that. So
Mhm.
it has to have a story. So I add elements in. So now I find
Got
myself
it.
photographing bugs, bees, or I'll try to draw them in. So yeah,
Hmm.
that's
Cool. Okay. So you now going back to the background,
Mhm.
do you use other backgrounds sometimes? I haven't looked at your whole body of
Yeah,
creative work.
I usually start off with one, and a great tip is for color harmony, is if you photograph, especially like if you photograph a flower, we'll use that because that's very simple. So if you photograph a flower, I usually will crop in to like just the flower. I won't have the greenery or the stems, and then that will be my base. And so I'll expand that. Um, and then I'll start mixing it because those are all the same colors in the flower. So I'm getting color harmony with the flower. So then I'll take that and I'll mixer brush up those colors to make my background. And then
Got it.
the selected flower, put it on, and I'll start painting the flower with the mixer brush, and then I'll go into the smudge tool to add more detail and depth and shadowing to it. But that's how I use it. And then sometimes I will drop in, like if I've been, I'll photograph like dead trees now because sometimes I'll do that, and then I'll add like a tree kind of in the background. I'm trying to
Hmm.
use all of my own images, and at one point I was putting in, I do still do a lot of textures. I'll add textures to the background. I At one point I was photographing images at the museum, like your friend. You just said I go to the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, and I was photographing some of the, and I don't know if this is, it's photographing the painting, but if you looked at the image, you would never know. It's not, you would never know that that was the painting. I'll take just a bit, like
Mhm.
the corner tree of it or something. So it's,
Mhm.
I don't know if that falls into copyright laws, but it's so distorted that you would never look at it and say, oh, that's a Monet or that's from that you would never
Right.
know. So that's what I,
Yeah.
you know, but that's what AI is doing now. It's taking everyone's art, and so I'm not a huge AI lover at the moment. I know about it, and you would be a fool not to learn about it, but it's not something, I don't think it's there yet. I don't like the look of it.
Right.
So
Right. I've in Photoshop, I've asked for it to change something and I've gotten the absolute craziest non-related something. So yeah, it's still in progress. What
it's
I what I love and value about what you're sharing is that I think you're still like when you're photographing a bird that you saw on TV,
mhm,
it's still you reacting to something
mhm.
and collecting that. Like your elements that you're putting in are ones that for you have your experience and your meaning. It's like with AI, if you said, give me an ostrich with a teal hat and this kind of background and bunch of feathers, and then boom, with something kind of cool, but there's no you in it. There's no juice. There's no Karen in
No, and
that.
that's
So,
and a lot of the art, I mean, if you're a painter, it's kind of, if you really look at your artwork and what you're creating, it tells you a little bit about your past and your inner, like your inner self. Like I was also,
right.
you can't tell in Zoom, but I am, well, I'm shrinking because I'm old, but
She's
I was
tall.
6 feet. I'm 6 feet tall. So, and if I wear
Yeah.
heels, and so as a kid, I was teased and I was called Stork because that's a nice name.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
and so I painted my fabulous bird here because I'm like, all right, well, yes, I was teased as a kid, but I still am fabulous. So, or a lot of
Yes.
my bullying, I was looking back at a lot of my images, and I have at least four images that I've painted that have an underlying bullying theme to them.
Mm.
Um,
Interesting.
which I was looking at that and I'm thinking, it subconsciously just comes out. Like my very first
Right.
one was a shark that I photographed. It was a shark and then a fish tank and fish. And my very first painting my first GR I ever got in 2019 was Shark Week's Over, You Bully. And then, and, and there was this
So,
kind of fighting off this shark. So um,
uh-huh.
it just brings out the underlying things in your life, I think. So,
Right. So, art therapy, there are people who go to school to learn art therapy, and it's a part of their practice as psychologists and artists.
mhm.
So, when we're doing creative projects like this, or even just photographing in general, it's I can see that there's art therapy that we're doing that we don't even know we're doing.
Don't,
I
it's,
so my first photograph that I said, this is a piece of art, and I used it in my when I started my business. I used it on my card, my signage at about bridal shows
mhm.
had this black and white photograph of a little girl about 5, and I took it in New York on vacation, and she was running with a big balloon and in a like a little nook of a building. So anyway, that part's not important, but she was running one way and looking back, and her hair was flying, and she had a clip in her feet and different things. It was just, and the balloon landed in the perfect geometrical spot. It's a really good image. Many years later, I looked at this photograph that was taken when I was 5 at a wedding. My dad was a minister, and the one wealthy family in our church had this beautiful wedding, and they gave us a picture of me. Um, Bride and groom are talking. The back of my sister's ponytail is in it, and I'm flying past them. Almost the exact same pose, definitely the same energy.
So
And
it's
it suddenly dawned on me that I picked a self-portrait that I had no idea, what it was about that felt so right to use that. And I booked a lot of work with it because I wasn't just showing a bride or a bride and groom or a church. They were like, oh, she's an artist. So interesting that you bring that up. I
so that
I love that. I love that.
I really do. It's like if you look and if you just go about doing your paintings or your art and don't look at it, you would just be like, oh yeah, that was just a pretty picture. But if you like the other
Mhm.
thing I do is like I do a lot of princess, if I photograph a high school senior, I'll make her a princess, but I'll also put sort of a kind of a not creepy, but creepy, like a rat's kind of creepy.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Or
not a
a
pretty princess.
spider in her
Yeah, it's
hair,
not a
or
pretty princess. But if I look back, that goes back to my childhood too, because my mother used to always say to me, she'd say, people would say, "Oh, your children are beautiful," because we were all tall and blonde, and we were dressed perfectly and behaved perfectly. And she used
Mhm.
to say to me, your looks will get you in the door, but that's as far as it'll get me. So I never thought that I
Mm.
was anything special. And I was never dressed as a princess as a kid. Never. I was either a hobo or a clown or or a creepy monster. So it's kind of like I kind of wanted to be a princess every so often. So it's like it's both in an image. So I look at
Yeah,
that and that's my obsession.
interesting.
None of them are pretty, just beautiful, just even if it's a little girl, she's holding a frog. Um,
Yeah.
instead
So
of
it's that tomboy in you. It's
yeah,
that pretty princess that is because you are by by American standards, you are a beautiful, classic, tall blonde, but
I
inside you're
was. I'm not
so much
anymore. I
more
was.
than you are still a beautiful blonde.
Thank but
And yes, that's great, but inside there's that tomboy, that
yeah.
person that likes to get messy, or maybe not messy, but likes to
I get messy. Yeah.
break through the expectations of who they might think you are based on looks alone.
But you have like an outward
Fascinating.
appearance that you try to show the world, but the people that know me the most, it's like that's like, you know, don't ring my bell without me knowing you're there because I'm in the backyard covered in dirt or whatever. I mean, like I've pulled out a lilac bush that was dying with my bare hands one day. It's just like, oh,
Oh,
so it's so bad.
yeah,
But yeah.
yeah. That's
Um,
so interesting. I'm going to have to
and
ponder images.
look at
I'm
your
just,
images and see. I mean, there's another
yeah.
really, really famous photographer that I love, and all of her images have this like, this like, sort of inner pain and then growth and something off in the distance. And if you talk to her, you can see where that comes from. So I think
Who is that?
art. I can't say that in a public Zoom. I'll share it with you privately. I can't.
Okay.
But her stuff is I just because I don't know if she would appreciate me
Yeah,
saying that.
sure, sure.
Um
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean if you look at you look at the work people do, there's usually some part of them in there. So that's why it's difficult to say where do you start and what it has to it has to speak to you. If
Hmm.
you don't like
Hmm.
humor, you don't like Disney, then don't be painting an animated ostrich. Like,
Right, right. What I'm also hearing, because I think there is such a tendency for artists to feel sort of paralyzed, um, because it's like we, blank canvas. If we were actually putting paint on a canvas,
Mm-hmm.
it like that. I think I didn't ever paint because I was kind of afraid of that blank canvas. Like,
Yeah.
how do you pick some? And the nice thing when I got a camera was I could do art,
Mm-hmm.
and every click didn't have to be something important, but within that, I would discover some things, and it would slow me down enough to start paying attention to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think what you've shared is such a great way for people to think about just for now, learn the tools, pick something that you're naturally drawn to at first, and then do things,
And,
play,
and
see
then
what comes up with
and,
it.
and don't
Um,
delete anything because in painting,
don't what?
don't delete anything, any of your images.
Ah,
Delete any. I made the mistake. It's like, oh, that's awful. Delete. Don't, because I
mhm.
shared with you, I took an image off of Animal Planet of a bird because I wanted a beautiful bird and I didn't have a beautiful bird. And so it was off a TV. It's pixelated, it's got grain, it's a photo of a TV screen, which is allowed
Mhm.
in the artist category, like we discussed. Um, but you can, when you paint it, if you look at, if you go to, my site or my Facebook page and you see some of my images, a lot of the times it looks nothing like the beginning. Like that ostrich was this mangy, like molting, ugly thing. And I was in Texas, and I said, I got to go photograph those ostriches down there. It was a winery. And my sister said, they're so ugly. Why? And I said, oh, because I'm going to make her beautiful. I'm going to make them fabulous.
Aw.
I didn't really know what I was going to do, but I knew that it was like a subject that I was drawn to. So, and that's what she was. I mean, the original is the ugliest thing. And I've done a couple of ostrich images because, I'm tall and I was, kind of a,
Mhm.
but
So this, like, my mind is going in lots of very fun ways listening to you,
yeah,
um, and connecting dots. So have you been to Spain? Have you seen um, Salvador Dali's anything?
I have not.
No?
I have not.
Okay.
I do not know.
So when I was there, we went to a museum, his museum first, and there's all this crazy stuff, and you're like, how does he think of these things? Where does that come from? Then we went to his home. I think it's called Cadaqués.
Yeah.
Um, and so many elements that are in his paintings are actual objects he has in his house. He
Oh,
has pitchforks, he has eggs, he has the Michelin Man sculpture in his penis-shaped pool, and um like in his house he's got stuffed goats and like three small, medium, large little chairs like the three bears. And so my guess is he collects things and then starts like you do with something, and I'm guessing, well, he doesn't do it anymore, but it unfolds. He has clocks, he has actual objects around in his world
mhm.
to help him.
Right.
He was not just like, oh, I think about a pitchfork. Like, he's like, oh, here's old-fashioned pitchfork. So I, again, going back to that communicates things about him, because those were things he personally was drawn to
Right.
and collected. And I'm guessing, because now they're all on display everywhere, all perfect and neat, but I'm guessing he had probably piles of stuff. Uh,
He
it,
probably
so,
collected all that stuff because that stuff
yeah, to be
that
anywhere and be like,
drawn
oh,
to
I like those
drawn to him.
pitchforks.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah,
Yeah,
those things spoke to him. So
yeah.
I just
So as visual artists, we get to take those little objects with our cameras, or online we can find digital things. So, and I don't think it's cheating. You didn't say cheating. Nobody said cheating.
No,
Um,
it's
because people who paint, they're taking from somewhere
nothing
too. You know,
nothing
my
is
sister,
original. Nothing is
no.
I just watched a competition, and I saw an image that was very close to mine, and the title was very close to mine. And I'm like, okay, but she's taking classes with me. And so I'm like, if I'm teaching, then and she's learning, she looked at my image and said, probably said, because I did this when I first started, I said, let me see if I can do that. And
Hmm.
it's similar. Like if you look at hers and mine, you can see where the inspiration was that she did it. And people, are you upset at that? I'm like, no, she's if I'm teaching, I cannot get upset with someone if they're trying to imitate what I'm doing. It's you just can't, because that's the learning process. You see something and say, let me see if I can do that. And
Right.
that's a learning. And
And
then
it,
you build your own style as you go, but you have to
right.
start. Nothing is original. There's nothing original
Yeah.
out there. Nothing. So
And she may not have even realized at the time,
no, I
because
mean,
I know,
I did a painting years ago in the and I had an artist call me up and say, I caution you not to copy. And I was like, uh, it was just in my head because and the image that I had wasn't even digitally put together. It was just something that I'd taken. I'm thinking, let me see if I can, sort of emulate that style. And because I was
mhm,
brand new on the competition circuit, people thought it was hers. And it was
right.
because I looked at it. So, and then you build and you create your own style. So
Yeah.
I think it's a learning process, like, painting an apple,
I,
like, you know,
right.
a
I also
ball.
think, I think there are ideas like, let me move. So if you're on video, you can see this portrait of a little boy holding his daddy's legs.
Yep.
And that got Best Portrait in the Western United States. And the next year, there were like 7 or 8 images almost identical. But
That's what happens.
I think I think that not all of those people saw mine and thought, "Oh, that's a good idea." But that there's ideas like it may be that there's a commercial that we all see and it gets into our
It's,
visual memory.
yep.
And then when, like for me, in my photo lab that used to be in town, it was so nice to have a pro lab in town. There was a portrait or a big photograph of ballet dancers' feet and a little girl and legs and a little girl in between them holding
Mhm.
um, a couple of the legs. And so when I saw this, I think I was reflecting back on that image.
That-
So there's things that just they're in the wind. They're
It's, and that,
um,
I mean, I have a, um, I have a folder that I collect. And so I follow real artists. I don't follow digital
mhm,
artists. I follow real artists. I follow pencil drawing artists. And I have a folder that if something like says, I love that, I put it in. So it's like an inspirational folder. So that stuff is like
mhm,
floating around in your self-conscious, and you just you don't know that it just comes out, and you've seen it somewhere, and everyone has seen it somewhere. I mean, two
mhm.
birds sitting on a branch. I mean, that's been done like 1,000 times. So,
Yeah,
um, so it's subconsciously if something like sings to you or speaks to you, and you see it, it's just up there, and then you put your own. Hopefully, you put your own sort of little spin on it, so it's not, let me just trace this exactly,
right.
but yeah, but that's a learning process too, I think. So, um,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't.
My women's photography group yesterday, we got together and each of us picked a still life image,
Mhm.
um, and then recreated it as much as we could. And the learning on that was to try to study how's it lit. Like I picked this beautiful bowl. I wish I could have found the bowl
Mhm.
and lemons. Pretty simple, but beautiful. And I have a lemon tree that has tons of lemons. So I was like, oh, that's an easy one. And when I first laid them out, I was like, oh, that's good. And then I kept studying and like, oh no, they have them turned up. So the little tips. Oh, and I see there's a rounding. So trying to come as close as I could to that was education. Now, would I feel good about entering that in competition? No, I would not, because it's so imitative that it's really not my creative idea. But
Right.
what I learned from that,
Mhm.
now I'd be like, oh, I'm going to do a still life with some lemons. And I've got so much education. And then watching my other friends with the things that they did, we learned. And one of my friends loves shadows in pictures, and she had a picture where it was just a fork and the light was from behind, and there were these stripy shadows in the foreground. And she was work trying to get a um, the shadow, and I know enough to say your light source is too close because the closer it is, the softer the light is. So we found a hard flashlight and made that work. So it was just such a fun, creative project. And one woman was like, "I have never worked like this before." Her art is to go on safari, photograph animals, and put them in incredible digital backgrounds
Mhm.
and sell huge art pieces of that. But she's like, "This is going to change uh, what I do." And she makes good money selling her art. So I guess the moral of that story is try some different things. Try to copy
Sure.
and learn from the copy.
Yes.
But if it's totally imitative,
Then no.
maybe sure, hang it in the studio, but don't enter it in competition or put it
Right.
on your
If it's
website.
totally imitative. You're brand new and you've imitated. Okay, I can understand that. But then you've got to start branching out and doing your own, your own thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just actually got back from well, not just got back, but I went to Africa this past August. And because of
Mm.
my love of animals, it was always my thing to do. So now I'm like painting. I'm
Oh,
painting elephants and zebras and
I love it.
beaters because the birds are like colorful birds. And so my entire decor in my home is changing to black and white animals to go with
Yeah.
like it can't be just mishmash. It's black and so I'm in a black and white animal painting phase.
Mm.
Just because I want it in my house because
Yeah. Cool, cool.
it speaks to
Yeah.
me. So have yet to figure out how to sell them, but I really need to start selling them. I mean, but it's
So this woman, Shar Webster, if you ever have a chance to find her, get any of
Char,
her materials,
Charlotte, Charlotte or
Char, Char.
Char Webster.
So she does commissioned art and she finds people who want to decorate their homes, and she will study, she'll go there, she'll photograph it, and then she'll pick some images and show them how she would use it as art. So she's really using it as decor for people. And then they buy it for thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So she's turned what we do, which is custom personal art
Yeah.
as photographers, that for me it's wall art is my main thing that I sell.
Yep.
So she's using the similar one-on-one
Hmm.
creative personal um, recommendations and suggestions in the same way to decorate people's homes with
Right.
art that she's done, but that she recommends for them. So that was kind of a surprising way that she sells her art.
But that
Well,
has,
I don't know how much we've gone over
I
time.
don't know, because we've
Um,
been, we've been disconnected a couple times, so I don't know.
yes. So, two quick things.
Yep.
If people want to get in touch with you, um, or two and a half. So I know you have a gift where if you go to your educational site, there are some courses and brushes you can download. So where do they go for
Yeah,
that?
I have how to start basic class on how to start digital painting. It's the basic goes over all the tools, and then there's others. There's some free brushes on there. There's some free tutorials on there. Um, so it's
So
worth
how do we get there?
it's education.karenmccall.com. So
Okay.
um,
And so thank you for that. And so last thing, I would love for you to share
yeah,
either a parting thought about our conversation or anything, or if there's something you were like, oh, I wish I had mentioned that.
I think
So,
I've mentioned a
you know,
lot.
what's what's your last thought?
I am an open book. If you enter professional photographers, you do all of that. I've taken the judging class. I've chosen not to judge because I love, I think one of my gifts is teaching. I just think it is. I want to give back. I want to teach. I want to share what I know now. That's what I want to do. So
Okay.
I'm basically
So,
an open book. If
so
you have any questions, reach out and I will steer you in the right direction
great.
of what you want.
So
So
what I'm asking is a takeaway for people,
a takeaway,
something for them to ponder.
um, do what you love. If it's sacred
Okay.
to you and you do it, do what you love. I mean, that's what it's all about. Just, you've got to do something that makes you happy. And the older you get, it's like I want to do what makes me happy. Don't really want to photograph those little league kids anymore. I want to do this. So do what
I
makes
love
you happy is my takeaway.
I love it. Well, thank you, Karen. And I want to remind people to stay tuned for my quick wrap up as best I can do with so much information that Karen has shared and so much inspiration. So that being said, Karen,
I have
thank
one
you
last
so
place
much.
that they can go if you're interested in following me or if you are on social media. I do have it's a private Facebook group. I just chose to make it private so I know who's coming and going. And it's Photoshop
Mhm.
painting from Drab to Fab.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Photoshop painting from Drab to Fab. Or you can look me
Okay.
up on Facebook and it's one of my groups. So and it's a spot where you can share your art to get feedback if you wish. I have lots of people that post on there and say, what do you think of this? It's also a place to find out of upcoming courses that I have, or just, art stuff. So
Love it.
that's
Love
another
it.
place you can find me. So, and that's it, Lucy. Take it away.
Okay, so again, Karen, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing. And I know people are gonna love this episode.
Good. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Mhm.